About a month ago, I was in my local camera store and they had a used Leica Q2. The owner saw me kind of eyeing it up and asked if I wanted to try it out for about 24 hours. Fast forward a month later and I'm the proud owner of a Leica Q2. Honestly, this might have been a mistake, but it's a happy mistake. And figured I'll do a little video sharing my experience of using this for the last month and how it's kind of changed my approach to photography. So I won't go into too much detail about the camera itself because there are tons of excellent videos on the Q2 on YouTube. But just a quick overview, it's full frame, it has a fixed 28mm Summilux f1.7 lens, and it is 47 point something megapixels. So on paper, it's got great specifications. It's got more megapixels than my A7 IV. It's got a very good prime lens that effectively behaves as multiple prime lenses, considering that you can crop in a lot because of those 47 megapixels. So why did I get the Leica Q2? I went into the camera store for a completely different reason, but I tried it out for 24 hours, and those 24 hours, I fell in love with this camera. And it's a weird thing to say, but there is an emotional connection with cameras. They're an extension of ourselves, and I've talked about this before, but I never really fell in love with any camera before. Like, I've never had a very close connection. My A7 IV, although it's fantastic, it's just a workhorse. It gets the job done and it provides the quality that I need for my work. But a little backstory, I'd felt stale in my photography. So I think deep down I was looking for something to reignite my passion in creating photos and storytelling with my photo work. So when I had that Leica Q2 for those 24 hours, I decided to go up the canyon. Now, these aren't incredible landscape photos. I wanted this experience to be more of a storytelling. You know, it was just at one of my local canyons. We're not going to a national park or anything. And the lighting wasn't the best, but in my mind, this camera, it was an everyday camera. So I figured I'd try and use it in a way that it was intended to be used. And to be honest, I was really impressed with the results I got. And I had to do very little color manipulation to make them really stand out. And I think it comes down to that Summilux lens that just has this incredible 3D rendering that just creates this really nice light fall off around a subject and really pleasing, contrasty and punchy colors. So after those 24 hours, I knew that this camera was going to answer a lot of questions that I had been asking myself deep down with my own creative journey. The biggest reason as to why I said, why not, I'll spend a few $1,000s buying this camera, kind of on a whim, because I had only had it for 24 hours and I hadn't even considered the Leica Q2 at all being added to my kit, is because Leica retains their value. Camera gear in general retains its value, and I feel like I'm pretty good at buying camera gear and breaking even when I'm selling it on, because I do go through a lot of camera gear. But Leica in particular will retain its value, particularly with the Q3 bringing a lot of hype around that Q lineup. A lot of people are looking into the Q or the Q2 because the Q3 is impossible to find right now. And I think for my journey, I do want to pick up the Q3. I am on a wait list with a local camera store. So I'm confident that I can make my money back with this Q2 when that Q3 becomes available. So that's a little bit of backstory on how I came to be an owner of the Q2. One of the biggest enticements of this camera is how small it is, and as an everyday camera it's been absolutely fantastic, to be honest. It's a little bit on the bigger side compared to the X100V, obviously, because the lens is much larger, but it's a much better lens. And if I took this lens hood off, which is smaller than the one that comes with it, I did want a circular lens hood, and if I took that off, it will obviously be a little bit smaller. But as an everyday camera, it's pretty much the perfect size. I can put it in one of the slings that I have up on my wall up there, and it fits in that sling perfectly if I want to carry some other stuff and not have anything in my pockets, or I can just, you know, throw it around my neck with this strap that I have. But this camera really hasn't left my side whenever I leave the house since buying it a month ago. It's just been a perfect camera to document those experiences. And the quality, I cannot emphasize enough how good the quality of these photos is. It's not just about the sensor, the lens, this Summilux lens. If Leica made this lens on its own, because it doesn't exist as a separate lens, it would probably be worth more than the camera itself. So you're buying a Summilux lens with a camera built in for the price of a lens, which is actually really good. But the lens itself, the way they have designed it and created it, and all of the elements, absolutely every single piece work in perfect harmony together to create a beautiful image that renders absolutely immaculately. And immaculately, I don't even know if immaculately is a real word, but needless to say, this lens is absolute perfection. So after the first 2 weeks of ownership, I did not leave the house without this camera. Whether I was just going to the gym or just running an errand, I'd always have it with me, because there are moments that happen that we may want to photograph, and you know, the saying goes, the best camera you have is the one that is with you. So I may have felt a tiny bit of buyer's remorse, and I wanted to make it worth it, so I did not let this camera leave my body. But it helped kind of reignite my passion for photography, and not just landscape photography, but documenting and storytelling as well. I would be taking photos, high quality photos at that, with this camera, of just kind of mundane things, but photos that I'll cherish for a lifetime. And I think a lot of that enjoyment that I feel owes to the fact that this is a very bare bones and simple to use camera, with just a few buttons on the back, one dial on the top, and then we have that manual aperture ring, which I absolutely love. And kind of just going along with the design, it's German engineering at its finest. This thing is an absolute tank. It's pretty much fully weather sealed, and honestly, I'll trust this camera in harsh elements more than any other camera that I've used. It kind of lined up nicely, the time frame that I bought this camera, because I was using it as an everyday camera, but I also had a trip to Iceland, and it was really interesting to see. So I brought the Q2, my drone, my A7 IV, my FX30, and I had a GFX 50S Mark II on loan from Fujifilm. And after getting home and importing all of my photos and backing them up, over 50% of my photos were taken with the Q2. And if I subtract all of the photos that I made with my drone, because Iceland is a very drone heavy, it's a drone paradise essentially. After disregarding the drone photos, I think it was around 70 to 80% of my camera photos were made with the Q2. And I was really surprised by that. But looking back, I definitely felt I lent more toward the Q2, because I always had it on my body, and the flexibility of this prime lens paired with the 47 megapixel sensor made me not have to pick up my A7 IV. I was so comfortable using the Q2 and confident in its quality that I used it for pretty much most types of photography, except when I needed ultra wide or super telephoto. So I'm a month in of owning the Q2 now, and I definitely think that my trip to Iceland played a huge role in my feelings on this camera, because to be perfectly honest, I could have gone to Iceland with just my iPhone and still come away with some fantastic images. But that being said, the Q2 definitely made my experience in Iceland a lot more enjoyable, because I tend to fall into a trap of choice paralysis, particularly when I bring a ton of gear with me. You know, I'm not sure what camera I want to use for what role, but the Q2 having just a fixed lens allowed me to focus more on creating those photos rather than figuring out what focal length I want to use, figuring out what camera I want to use. I can focus more on the composition and more on that actual moment itself, and just enjoy the moment as well, and enjoy that creating process. And one area that people get caught up on is its price, and it is an expensive camera. I'm not going to deny that, and the Q3 is obviously even more expensive. But when you think about what this offers, it's essentially 3 prime lenses in one. You get high quality results, 28 millimeters, 35, 50, and even sometimes at 75. That high price is getting you 3 to 4 lenses essentially. So it has a lot of flexibility without the hassle of having to change lenses. And I think just the whole user experience of this camera has been what I've enjoyed the most. It's very simple, and I've talked about the design and its ergonomics, but it's just been a very joyful camera to use. And it's just kind of reignited my passion for making photos. And I feel the results speak for themselves. I think the images from here are absolutely stellar and definitely have an edge of quality over my Sony. You may not have been able to see it on obviously the YouTube video because it's going through YouTube and compression and all that, but there is something magical about the results of the Q2. So if you're eyeing the Q2, hopefully this has helped answer some questions. I definitely think it's more than just a street photographer's camera, which I feel Leica tends to have a heavy lean toward, but using it as an everyday camera, just documenting lifestyle and obviously landscapes, it's been absolutely fantastic. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and if there's something that I wasn't able to cover that you want to know about the Q2, then just drop a message down below or hit me up on Instagram at JohnnyRoams. And until next time, I'll see you later.